Organizations often assume training is the solution whenever performance declines. However, effective need assessment requires identifying the root causes before recommending interventions. Educall Dynamics is a multimedia learning content company facing serious performance challenges. In this presentation, I will apply Gilbert's Behavioral Engineering Model to diagnose Educall Dynamics performance challenges and determine whether training, organizational improvement, or a blended approach is most appropriate. So let's dive right in. Gilbert's Behavioral Engineering Model, first published in 1978, remains one of the most influential frameworks in human performance technology. The model organizes 6 performance factors into 2 roles: environmental factors on top, which involves information, resources, and incentives, and individual factors on the bottom, which involves knowledge, capacity, and motivation. We will apply each of these 6 boxes to Educall situation in the coming slides. When selecting a diagnostic model, I compared Gilbert's Behavioral Engineering Model with Harley's front-end analysis. Educall challenges extend beyond a simple training request. Behavioral Engineering Model provides a broader framework for analyzing organizational systems, making it a stronger fit for this complex case. Harley's FEA, which is the front-end analysis, is valuable for identifying performance discrepancies and determining whether a problem is worth solving, but it is less structured for unpacking these layered organizational and systematic issues we see at Educall. The Gilbert Behavioral Engineering Model recognizes that employees can perform well only when both the work environment and individual capabilities support success. As Stefaniak 2021 argues that the model you choose should match the complexity and scope of the performance problem. Given Educall multi-departmental systemic issues, the Gilbert Behavioral Engineering Model provides the diagnostic depth for Educall that harmless front-end analysis cannot offer. On the left, you will see the current state of Educall. 62% of projects are missing deadlines by an average of 10 business days. That's a significant operational problem. 2 major clients have flagged quality inconsistencies and branding failure, which threatens client retention. And staff morale is declining and communication between departments is poor. The taxing implementation intended to improve efficiency has instead introduced confusion through overlapping templates and redundant data entry. On the right side, the desired state represents what effective performance looks like: on-time delivery, consistent quality, satisfied clients, and a workforce that can use its tools confidently. This gap between where Educall is and where it needs to be is what Behavioral Engineering Model will help us to diagnose. Moving into the environmental layer of Behavioral Engineering Model, all 3 factors reveal significant gaps. For information, staff lack clear role definitions, consistent branding guidelines, and reliable feedback loops between departments. They simply don't have the data and direction needed to perform effectively. For resources, the taxing platform was supposed to streamline work but has instead introduced friction through redundant data entry and inconsistent tagging. Workload distribution also appears uneven, which strains team capacity regardless of individual skill. For incentives, declining morals is a strong signal that recognition and reward structures are misaligned. They are misaligned with performance expectations. If consequences for missed deadline are unclear or inconsistently applied, there is little motivation to prioritize on-time delivery. These three environmental factors alone could explain most of the EduCore performance problem before we even look at individual factors. Now let's examine the individual factors. For knowledge, there is a clear trainable gap. Taxing onboarding was insufficient, and staff lack formal training on quality standards and branding requirements. This is where targeted instructions can make a huge difference. For capacity, the issue appears to be an uneven workload distribution that may exceed what individual can reasonably handle. Therefore, this is a staffing and workflow design problem, not something training can fix. You cannot train someone to have more hours in a day. For motivation, the declining morale likely stems from the environmental conditions we already identified in the previous slide. When the environment is frustrating, individual motivation suffers regardless of attitude. This distinction is critical because it tells us that training alone will not resolve EduCore challenges. We need systemic changes too. This table maps out diagnostic findings to appropriate intervention types. On the training side, we have three clear needs: taxing onboarding to address the knowledge gap around the new platform, communication and collaboration training to improve cross-departmental interaction, and quality standards and branding compliant training to reduce client revision requests. On the non-training side, the interventions are more systemic, simplifying taxing by reducing redundant templates and standardizing tagging, clarifying rules and responsibilities so staff know who owns what, redesigning project workflows to eliminate unnecessary steps, and conducting a staffing review to rebalance the workload distribution. The key principle here, drawn from both Gilbert and Stefanik, is that environmental fixes must come before training. If we train people on a broken system, the training will fail because the system undermines what they learned. No model is without limitations and strength. The strength of behavioral engineering model is that it is holistic, covering both environmental and individual factors. Secondly, it is systematic, which reduces a diagnostic biases. Thirdly, it is organizationally focused, so it surfaces the root causes that individual level analysis would have missed, and it is efficient because it prevents organizations from investing in training that won't solve the real problem. However, the limitation of behavioral engineering model is that it is data intensive. You need substantial evidence to populate each of the 6 boxes accurately. It is also primarily diagnostic rather than prescriptive. It tells you what is wrong, but does not automatically tell you how to fix it. My recommendations are sequenced across 3 time horizons. In the immediate term, we must fix the environmental barriers first. Simplify taxing by reducing overlapping templates. Clarify roles and responsibilities across departments and establish clear communication protocols. These changes require minimal investment but will have an outweighed impact. In the short term, once the environment is stabilized, we deliver targeted training, taxing, onboarding, quality standard and branding compliance training, and communication workshops. We could also launch feedback mechanisms so staff can report issues in real time. In the long term, we conduct a formal staffing review to address workload distribution, redesign project workflow to eliminate systemic friction, implement performance incentives tied to on-time delivery and quality, and also establish ongoing evaluation cycle. This phased approach ensures that each intervention builds on the last and that we are not training people into a broken system. Let me summarize this presentation with 3 key takeaways. First, the root causes of EduCorp performance gap are primarily environmental, problems with information, resources, and incentive, not individual skill deficit. This is the most important findings because it redirects our intervention strategy away from training alone solution. Second, blended interventions outperforms training only approaches. Environmental redesign must precede and accompany any learning solution, or the training will be undermined by the very system it's trying to improve. Third, Gilbert's Behavioral Engineering Model is the right diagnostic tool for this situation. It is holistic, systematically structured, and it gives us depth and clarity. Thank you.